The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. I know we have a couple minutes before we get started. I just wanted to welcome you and let you know I'm so happy you're all here. Just going to give us a couple minutes till everybody gets settled in. But we are just about to kick off momentarily. And I also just want to say, I hope everybody, in light of what's happening out in California, I hope everybody here and your loved ones are safe and everything is okay with any of your loved ones. Just really devastating to see what's happening. So I didn't want to leave that unsaid as we start today. All right, so just a couple more minutes. And feel free to post in where you are located in the world. We usually have people from all over the world that join us, which is such a joy. This is wonderful thing about webinars is that we can all get together and have these educational seminars at the same time all over the world. So feel free to put that in the chat where you are, what city, what country, whatever you feel comfortable with. Just as we get started here, I see something in it. And I just want to make a comment. The chat is not available from what I understand, so we use the question box to post these things. So I see Wyoming, Philip is in Wyoming, and Donald's in Little Rock, Arkansas, in the snow, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Gary is in Round Rock, Texas. We have Isabella in Toronto. Oh, we have a couple in Toronto. Excellent. Georgia. Oh, wow. Jamaica. Oh, excellent. We have another Texas. Beautiful. Illinois. Oh, I can't even read that fast. Germany, Ohio, Dallas. Good morning from Sparks. Nevada. Great. Republic of Guinea. How fantastic is that? Northern Italy. Welcome. Germany. More Texas. Oh, Houston. I used to live in Houston. And we have Alberta and Pennsylvania. I used to live in Pennsylvania too. Virginia. And we have Northwest Indiana. About 2 inches of snow. Oh my gosh. I hope everybody's okay. That's another thing. There's been so much of that crazy weather across the east. New York, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Nova Scotia. Wow. British Columbia. Excellent. Toronto and Montreal. Wow. I love this. And it keeps coming. Fantastic. This is great. I so appreciate knowing where everybody is. It just makes the world feel a little bit smaller and we feel more connected. I guess I should let you know where I am. I am in Denver, Colorado, which we just have a little bit of snow. So I'm sure it's nowhere near somewhat to the degree of some of, what you have in some of your areas. So just thank you for posting that. I was saying chat, but it really, for this particular GoToWebinar, we have to use the questions box for these things. So thank you. And I'm ready. I think we're all set to get started. So with that, welcome everyone. And if you have any trouble hearing me, just let me know. I'm going to be checking the questions. If there's any technical issues, let me know. So far, it looks like everybody's okay in the chat. Oh, we have United Arab Emirates here too. Wow, excellent. Alaska. Okay, I'm still looking at that. I guess we should start. So my name is Judy Hirsch, and it's a joy to be here with you presenting today the Diving into Project Management discussion. And we're going to be relating this content back as well to the PMP exam content outline. And I just want to go over a couple of webinar logistic details before we begin so you can get the most out of this. Throughout the webinar, as you already know, we have this questions box open. And we will also have an official Q&A session at the end, question and answer session at the end. So if you have questions that you want to ask before the Q&A session, you can use the question box that you've been using to post your location. And then simply just type your question in the box, and I will try to get to your answer right away because your questions and obviously your comments are going to contribute greatly to the value of this presentation. We do have a lot to cover, though. I tend to pack these with a lot of information. So if the volume of the questions grows, I may just defer some of those to the end of the webinar. So just understand that. I'll just kind of make judgment about that as we go along. Oh, the chat. Okay, so I'm seeing questions. So Sonia, the chat is, from what I understand, the way this is set up, you're best to use the questions because the chat is not available in this kind of format, the way that it's set up. So you can just, if you have any comments, yeah, you're welcome. You could just use the question box. I'll do my best to monitor that as we go along. All right, so what we're going to do is I just want to mention one thing, that this webinar does offer 1 PDU credit. I know you're here for all this amazing information, but it's nice to know that you have a PDU at the end of it as well. So I'll give you all the details that you need to report that at the end as well. And the recording of this event will be posted on the RMC website if you'd like to review it again, or any of our past educational webinars. And with that, let's get started. Okay, so this slide is just to respect the copyright of PMI for their various publications and, of course, their certifications. And we, likewise, our materials are copyright protected. So if you have any questions or need assistance, please contact us at RMC Learning Solutions about our event today, and this is the contact information. All right, so just a brief introduction so you know who I am if you've never attended one of the events that I've been hosting. I'm a professional business coach, a trainer, and certified project management professional. I got my PMP in 2013, but I have many more than 20 years of experience in project management, business analysis, software training, and professional development training in a variety of industries, but primarily pharmaceutical and IT and biotech. And I have a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's degree in international business. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to lead cross-functional, cross-cultural teams around the world through major global initiatives in software implementation and also compliance projects for Fortune 500 companies like Merck and Novo Nordisk and Abbott Laboratories and Citrix Systems. And now I teach certification courses such as the PMP exam preparation course for RMC Learning Solutions full-time. Okay, and I'd love to give everyone just a very brief background on RMC Learning Solutions, so you know the quality of the content you're about to receive. So Rita Mulcahy, the founder of RMC Learning Solutions, was a project manager in the late 1990s, as well as one of the world's first certified project management professionals. And she was really frustrated by the lack of the quality PMP preparation materials that were available. So she founded RMC Learning Solutions in 1991. And the first edition of her book was published in 1998. And at that time, it was really the first and only comprehensive resource that was dedicated to PMP exam prep. So RMC Learning Solutions has helped over 1 million professionals prepare for certification exams in project management, in business analysis, in agile, and we have a number of different learning solutions and products ranging from self-study to e-learning to classroom to instructor-led virtual, like in this type of format. And we have an international reach, currently trained in 60 regions and 18 languages. Unfortunately, I only speak one. And outcome-based learning through professional instructors, coaches, and mentors is what we focus on, just as PMI does. It's always about outcomes-based. So we're now celebrating more than 30 years of teaching students. So you're very fortunate that you found your way here. And of course, you're in the right place if you want to pass your PMP or CAPM or ACP exams. Let's look at the agenda for today. We have a lot to cover, like I promised. We're going to cover inputs and actions, project initiation and project planning specifically. We're going to look at defining a business case and a benefits management plan. We're going to talk about project selection criteria and we're going to talk about the charter, stakeholder identification and analysis, scope statement and project management plan, selecting the appropriate development approach, and you'll have an opportunity to claim your PDU and any questions. Now, because of the breadth of topics we're going to cover, the depth isn't going to be enormous, but we're going to touch on each of these because this is kind of an introduction, really, if you will, to different concepts, foundational concepts in project management. So by the end of the webinar, you should have a deeper understanding of how to initiate and plan a project and how these foundational elements influence a project's entire life cycle. So we're going to start with what PMI calls the process groups model. And if those of you that have been studying possibly for the PMP exam or CAPM may be familiar with this terminology. So the process groups model describes a plan-driven, you could say plan-driven, you could use the term predictive, you could use the term waterfall, but it describes, I'm going to use plan-driven approach to project management. Much of the information in the process groups model can actually be used as a learning model for project management in general. So understanding the model will not only really help if you decide to take the CAPM or PMP exam, but will also serve to enhance your project management skills. So the process groups model starts with 5 process groups that describe how a project is managed from beginning to end. While this general order of operations is valid, of course, there may be some back and forth between process groups since project management, as you probably know, isn't a linear process. It's iterative. So for our webinar today, we're going to focus on initiating and planning out of all these process groups, mostly for the predictive development approach, with an understanding that if these 2 groups, these 2 meaning initiating and planning, are executed effectively, the rest of the project can progress really on solid ground. So it's important to get the fundamentals or the foundation correct. Now, Rita's process chart, I mentioned that Rita founded RMC Learning Solutions. Rita's process chart, which is I'll show you in a moment, is one of our exam prep proprietary tools that illustrates really simply and directly the 5 process groups and the tasks involved in managing a project by process group. So this is Rita's process chart. Of course, you can't read this here. It's quite small, but we're going to go through this. So just to kind of give you a scope of what we're referring to when we're talking about Rita's process chart. But today, we're focusing on key points within the first 2 groups of initiating and planning. So let's begin with the initiating process group. And that involves identifying and analyzing stakeholders to align their expectations about the project. Pretty important. It also involves providing a guiding vision for the project in terms of the organization's strategic objectives, the benefits the project will help to achieve, the project's high-level scope, and any known constraints. And it enables formally starting a new project or project phase. It also enables the project to be officially authorized, and the project manager, it enables or gives the project manager the authority and the information necessary to begin the project. The outputs to this process are simply the project charter and the stakeholder register. So let's look at inputs to project initiating. So to initiate a project, you need to know or have the following: product description and requirements, how the project supports the company's strategic plan, list of likely stakeholders, known constraints. When we're talking about constraints, we're talking about schedule, budget, resources, etc. Known constraints, known risks, known assumptions, agreements, contracts, industry standards, where if that's applicable to the project, company change control system and the operational procedures, marketplace trends and legal, regulatory, or compliance factors, historical work breakdown structure, estimates, lessons learned, and templates, any historical information that we can glean from similar projects in the past. Maybe your organization has a knowledge repository where you can access this information. Potential impact that the current and planned initiatives could have, so have that knowledge. List of possible team members, organizational and project governance, and business case and benefits management plan. And I just want to take a moment now to just pause and look at the business case and benefits management plan, so we don't race through that, because it's a very important component of initiating a project. Okay, So first of all, what is a business case? Well, it answers the question, why is the project being done? On what financial or other basis can we really justify doing this project? The benefits management plan presents a summary of the project's benefits that are expected by the business and how they will be delivered and how they will be measured. The business case is summarized in the project charter. So it's an input to the charter and the project management plan both. The benefits management plan is also an input to the project charter. So this information about how and why a project was chosen will actually influence how the project is planned, what kinds of changes are allowed, and how the project scope is going to be defined. So this information will help the project manager align and motivate the team toward the end goal or the deliverables. So it really is, these documents are really valuable to have a good understanding of as we begin a project. Okay, and let's look at the actions you need to take during project initiating. So this is taken from Rita's process chart. The business case and benefits management plan are inputs to developing the project charter, as we said, and this information of how and why a project was chosen will influence how the project is planned, what kinds of changes are allowed, and how the project scope is defined. So in initiating, the project manager determines whether the business case and the benefits management plan can actually be achieved. And the project manager does some high-level planning to verify that it is likely the project can be completed within the given constraints of scope, of schedule, of costs, and so on. Stakeholders are also identified in initiating. Stakeholder analysis is performed to determine the stakeholders' expectations, their interest, their influence, and also their impact on the project. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to the initiating process group. I want to now talk about the planning process group to give you a sense of that as well. So the planning process group involves really walking through the project using a consistent process, iterating the plans, documents, and metrics, and getting the project organized in sufficient detail before starting the work to produce whatever the project's deliverables are. And what it does is it enables savings of resources, time, and money, and it enables increased stakeholder buy-in and commitment to the project, which is really important. I'm going to pause for a moment and just check the chat. So I see here, okay, a few questions. So the document, this presentation will be shared and sent out as well as posted on our website. Not the slide deck, that we don't hand out the slide deck separately. And then you said you're unable to see the bottom, the text from this particular slide. I'm not sure which slide, Robin. Understanding business, just make sure. Understanding business case. Okay, so let me just make sure we go back and you have that main parts of the business case. Okay, let me go back to that. Thank you for the questions. I'm going to go back. Let's see. Was it this that you weren't able to see? This has all of the content in it. You should be able to see just me looking at the slide and seeing what you see. Can you read the definitions? So sometimes there's a feasibility study that's part of the business case as well, an economic feasibility study that is done. So a business case can be quite extensive because you're asking what components are in a business case. So you can actually have that feasibility study that's included in that. So there's a lot of detail. This is kind of a understanding of what it is, but it can have a lot of it. It's really any information, depending on the organization, that organization feels is enough information to justify that particular project. And some organizations want a lot, like I said, a feasibility study, something very specific that was done to justify the project. this project or maybe over another project, because obviously there are so many competing priorities. So I just want to make sure, does everybody can they see this? Any questions on making sure I got all the questions here? Okay, good, Robin, good, good, good. See, you can also zoom in and out and click on the window. Okay, good. Good point. So Ariel is just mentioning you can zoom in and out and click on the, yourself, and good, good. All right, perfect. I don't want to, I want to make sure I'm keeping up with your questions, especially if you can't see something. So let's go back to planning. Okay, so the planning process group. Like we said, we got through this slide, but I just want to make sure everybody's okay with this. This is really where we do all the crux of the work and getting everything set up for executing. And we're not going to talk about executing today, but this is creating our project management plan. This is creating our metrics. Everything it's really where we're creating the set of instructions that we're going to follow, right? The procedures and methodologies and what we're going to measure our progress and our deliverables against. Everything gets set up in planning. So let's look at inputs to project planning. So to plan a project, you need to know or have the project charter and the business documents. We talked about business case, benefits management plan. Now, the project charter really outlines the project's high-level goals, objectives, and initial constraints, and it provides a foundation for further planning. Also, we need to have the stakeholder information. So identifying and understanding the needs and expectations of all stakeholders involved in the project is going to be really crucial for effective planning. And then we have enterprise, what's called influences, according to PMI, influences such as enterprise environmental factors, EEFs, you may have also seen the acronym. Those are external factors like company policies, market conditions, regulatory requirements that influence project planning but are out of the control of the project manager. We can also talk about, and we should be aware of, what's called the organizational process assets, or OPAs. Those are internal knowledge, templates, best practices from past projects that can be leveraged for the current project. A lot of times companies will have knowledge repositories that we can access this information in. And then we have project documents. So these are existing documents, like prior risk assessments or resource calendars, or what we have available for this project. Activity lists can be used as inputs for further planning. So any project documents. One of the most important actions that happens in the planning process group is the development of the project management plan. So the first thing you need to do in developing your project management plan is determine the development approach, and I'll show you it's one of the first things you see here on Rita's chart. We need to determine the development approach. Hopefully you can see my mouse here. But it's the first box. Determine the development approach, the life cycle, and how you will plan for each knowledge area. When I'm referring to knowledge area, I'm talking about the integration knowledge area, the scope, the schedule, the cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholders, right? We need to have a plan. Again, this is the official PMI process. There needs to be a plan for each knowledge area. So in predictive or plan-driven approaches, each knowledge area requires a management plan. So we're talking about a scope management plan, a schedule management plan, a cost management, budget management plan, and so on. So during planning, you are also developing your project schedule, your budget, your quality standards and metrics, you're determining team roles and responsibilities, and you're planning things like communications and risk responses as well. So now that we have a basic understanding of the first two foundational process groups, initiating and planning, let's take a step back and look at criteria for project selection. A project manager should know a project's history to really manage it effectively and achieve the intended deliverables and outcomes. So even though it's not likely that a project manager is involved in the actual project selection process, he or she should know why the project was selected And that because that information can have an impact on which constraints are most flexible and will influence how the project management plans and manages the project. So for example, and you see here on the slide, was it to establish a new area of business? Or was it required to meet regulatory or compliance requirements? Or possibly maybe it was the least expensive or most feasible solution to a problem. So let's look at a few economic measures that can be used for project selection now. A lot of us are familiar with the term return on investment. That determines the potential profitability of an investment in a project, right, by calculating the benefits received from the project or the anticipated benefits received in relation to the costs. And then we have what's called net present value. NPV, or net present value, is the present value of the total benefits, income or revenue, minus the cost over many time periods. So essentially, the project with the greatest net present value would be typically selected. And then we have internal rate of return, IRR. Think of a bank account when we're talking about internal rate of return. You put money in a bank account and you expect to get a return of some kind. For example, 1%, right? But you can think of a project the same way. If a company has more than one project in which it could invest, the company may look at the returns of the different projects and then select the project with the highest return. And then we have what's called payback period. It's the length of time it takes the organization to recover its investment in a project before it starts accumulating profit. And last one I'm going to touch on briefly is cost-benefit analysis, which is really comparing the expected costs of a project to the potential benefits it could bring the organization or its stakeholders, and the resulting cost-benefit cost ratio. If you have one that's greater than 1, it means the benefits are greater than the cost. If it's less than 1, it means the costs are greater than the benefits. So this is something that we actually teach in the course. I won't be able to go into the specifics of each now, but just know that the organization would likely consider more than one of these measures, along with other factors, to select the project rather than any one measure. But it's helpful for us to understand what was the driver, what was the determining factor for the projects that we're leading. The more we know, the more we can understand what's important and be able to drive our communications accordingly to our team and our stakeholders. So let me just check again for a moment on the chat. And I have to keep, scrolling down to the bottom because it goes back up to the top. Okay. Oh yeah, return on investment. So hopefully it says, could you please explain ROI? I did explain it. Hopefully you're okay with that. And is this part of the business case? Yes. Yes, good question, Gregory. This can be, would be part of the business case. Of course, every organization is different. When I speak, I'm talking, in general, but yes, this would be something because this provides, what the criteria for project selection. Absolutely. So what is one of the first documents created once a project is selected? Okay, I'm kind of quizzing you, but you probably know, and we're not in our exam prep course yet, so I won't require you to put that in the chat, but one of the first documents created once a project is selected is the charter. All right, so we're going to take a look at the charter because that is a very important document. And there is a slight delay from when I change the slide and when you see it. So I am pausing so that you don't miss anything, just so you know. So the charter authorizes the project to continue. And it's developed most often by the project manager during initiating. And it's issued or signed off by the sponsor. And it needs to be broad enough so it does not need to change as the project changes. And so, except of course under extreme circumstances and conditions. But the purpose of the project charter is really to plan the project at a high level to assess whether it's feasible within the given constraints. And the project manager may create the charter after meeting with key stakeholders to identify key objectives, requirements known at that point, scope, risk, and so on. And then detailed planning does not happen until after the charter is signed. That is definitely necessary. So let's talk about what's included in a project charter. These are just some examples you see on the screen of what could be included in a charter. The charter needs to be tailored to meet the needs of the business, especially when using an agile or hybrid approach. It may not look as typical as it does when we're talking about a predictive development approach, but it needs to be tailored to the size of the project as well. So the point is it needs to be tailored. So these are some things, these are just some examples you see here on the slide, but I want to look at really a beautiful illustration here of it. This is a project charter example that you see on the slide. I'm just going to walk you briefly through each of the categories. Remember, this isn't a hard and fast rule. Every single one of these categories has to be included, but this is a recommendation. This is something, this is a PMI, kind of approved, if you will, project charter example. So the first thing you want a project title and description. What is the project? If you're doing something for upgrading the payroll system, it would be called, upgrading the payroll system. We need the project manager assigned and the authority level of the project manager. So who is given authority to lead the project, and can they determine, manage, and approve changes to budget, schedule, staffing? What is the authority level? The business case. Why is it? We talked about that. Why is the project being done? On what financial or other basis can we justify doing the project? The resources pre-assigned. So how many or which resources will be provided? So sometimes a sponsor will pre-assign resources that they definitely want to be a part of the project, and that can show up in the charter. So example for the upgrading payroll systems, it could be, the corporate payroll processing group, payroll specialists, senior team of BAs, business analysts, enterprise architects, right? So that could be already pre-assigned. Key stakeholder list. Who will affect or be affected by the project or influence the project as known today? Also, key stakeholder requirements, as we know at that point when we're developing the charter. Those are requirements related to both the project and the product scope. That could be, paying employees, for our payroll example, pay employees based on the agreed upon rate, or adhering to country-specific government requirements related to tax withholdings, whatever the case is, stakeholder requirements, you get the idea. And then we have high-level product description and key deliverables. So what are the key product deliverables that are wanted, and what will be the end result of the project? And we have high-level assumptions. What's believed to be true or reliable in the situation? What do we believe to be the case, but maybe we don't have proof or data for at this point? So the details of assumptions would be logged or tracked in the assumptions log. We have high-level constraints. At this point, maybe they're high-level constraints. What factors may limit our ability to deliver? Maybe we have a pre-approved, financial resource of $1 million, whatever the case is. Measurable project objectives is another category here in our charter. How does the project tie into the organization's strategic goals? Or project approval requirements. What items need to be approved for the project, and who's going to have the sign-off authority? Things like that, as well as overall project risks. So overall potential threats for a project or opportunities for the project. A threat could be an error in employee payroll during implementation of the new system. That's a pretty big threat. Or as a project exit criteria. What needs must be met so that the project manager will be able to close or terminate the project or phase? And then finally, project sponsors authorizing this project, right? There's lines for approval at the bottom, as you see there. Okay, so also, I'm going to pause here to see if there's anything I can check on here. All right. You talked about the authority level. Yeah, so Daniel, the project manager authority, so without going into too much detail, each project and each organization assigns the project manager different levels of authority. And sometimes it depends on the type of organization we're talking about. Was it a projectized organization? Is it a matrix organization? Is it a functional organization? We talk about that in our class, but based on that, the project manager may have more or less authority. Maybe the functional manager has more authority than the project manager. Sometimes they have equal authority. So there's a lot of different, so there's a lot of ways we could go with that, but that will depend on the organization, the performing organization. Okay. Oh, this is an example of the project. Yeah, I guess it's really short, but I covered everything. So even if you can't see the what's at the bottom of the slide, I apologize for that. Hopefully you were able to hear that the last lines here, the couple of last lines in the slide are the exit criteria and the signatories, the signature. And what text is in the blue box at the bottom of the project charter example slide? Oh, okay, sure. So at the very bottom is just so for exit criteria, what needs must be met so the project manager will be able to close or terminate the project or phase, and the signature of those authorizing the project. Those are the last couple. I also verbalize it, but I know it's nice to be able to visually see it. So again, I apologize for that. Mental note for next presentation, not to put too much on the slide that takes up the entire slide. Okay. At the beginning of the project manager is identifying stakeholders. We talked about that, right? And we're determining their expectations, their interests, their influence and impact, and we're developing a stakeholder register. So I want to talk about that a little bit next here. The first stakeholders are likely those who identified the problem or need for the project in the first place. They may have been involved developing the business documents for the project. Therefore, the business case and benefits management plan may actually include lists of stakeholders. Other sources to identify stakeholders include contracts, agreements, and the project charter. I'll tell you, it's challenging to identify all stakeholders up front. Why do you think it's challenging to identify all stakeholders up front? Well, we've got changes within a project organization that may introduce new stakeholders, right? A project manager and team may miss stakeholders. Just, you do your best, but there's so many. Adaptive approaches, meaning agile type of approaches, may include an evolving scope or an emerging scope, which may mean an evolving stakeholder list. Or even on predictive projects, the stakeholder list evolves to some degree. So many project managers fail to consider the broad range of potential stakeholders. Just so much to think about. We're talking about a sponsor, team, product owner, senior management, subject matter experts, customers, product end users, other departments or groups within an organization, functional operational managers, sellers, consultants, regulatory agencies, financial firms, government agencies. If the project includes procurement, parties to the contract. So it's very understandable that we have to be, very careful to try to consider all of our stakeholders, because it will help us a lot to save money, to not have rework. The more stakeholders we have involved up front, it will make such a difference in our project. That's why I'm spending a moment talking about this. So I also want to emphasize that this is a team process. So be sure you're collaborating with the team on stakeholder identification and analysis. Also consult other stakeholders outside of the team, like subject matter experts, project managers in the organization who have maybe worked on similar projects, even professional associations where applicable, depending on what the industry is that you're in. So any stakeholder may suggest other stakeholders to add to the list. So let's look at specific methods that you can use for stakeholder identification and analysis. We have things like, surveys are a good example, interviews, focus groups, brainstorming. We could also have we could also perform, document analysis. This technique of document analysis is going to assess current and also historical project documents, like lessons learned and other information from past projects. The analysis can help project managers identify stakeholders and their stakes in the project. And then as well, we can use what's called stakeholder mapping. And it's a data representation method that maps stakeholders, their attributes into categories. Project managers use this method to analyze and plan how the project team will prioritize efforts to build relationships and also engage stakeholders. We won't be going into that in detail today, but I have done a discussion on that in a past webinar that you can look at on our website as well. But that's stakeholder mapping. That's the concept of it. And then we could do what's called individual stakeholder analysis. That seeks to determine how interested each stakeholder is in the project and what is at stake for them. Sometimes it has to do with ownership. Maybe they have to sell property for a proposed freeway expansion for the project. Or maybe it's knowledge, or a stakeholder may be the expert who designed a legacy inventory management system that's being upgraded or replaced, or maybe it has to do with rights. Maybe a stakeholder is concerned that a new housing development will cause an issue for the community by destroying watershed. It could be that. It could be the interest level they have in it, or a contribution. Maybe they're contributing one of their resources. So we need to understand this is a great another way of doing our identification and analysis is individual stakeholder analysis, as well as this is a term that if you're not as familiar with Agile, you may not know, called personas. Those are used in Agile projects primarily. As you can see from this graphic, I actually don't know now if you can see this in the graphic, but the point is personas are concise descriptions of stakeholders that can even include their values. And what they do is personas help the product development team visualize how each stakeholder will use the product, which provides focus, it provides clarity for design and creation of features. So it's a great idea. Here's this person, here's a description of this person, here's what they value. It keeps the development team really homed in on what's important, because when you're working in isolation away from direct continual feedback, things can get off track very quickly. So that's the point of a persona. Again, it's typically used in Agile. For the exam, PMP exam, it's related to Agile, period. Okay, so let's look at a tool that is a great tool to use. These two graphics give you visual examples of what might be included in what's called a stakeholder register. So all the information about stakeholders is compiled in the stakeholder register, which may include things like information such as the name and title of the person, their project roles and responsibilities, contact details, major requirements, their major requirements and expectations for the project, any assessment information such as their level of influence, power, and interest in the project, maybe even attitudes regarding the project, so we have an awareness, and then we can communicate accordingly, whether they are a decision maker or not, and then we can classify them, group by similar attributes, or other relevant information like their level of commitment to the project, communication preferences, right? You would decide, but the point is we need to have a stakeholder register. And these are some real key areas that are going to be beneficial as a project manager to have in your stakeholder register. So the stakeholder register is important input to planning our stakeholder engagement, as well as other planning processes like planning communications management. And these are all critical processes, obviously, for the success of the project. All right, so I wanted to now look at product versus project scope. And let me pause there before I go into that and see if there's any questions on stakeholders or registers or anything before I move on to the next section. The stakeholder cube. Bill. Okay, you want to know about? Let me go back for the stakeholder cube. There are yes, and Danielle says there's Excel templates where that can help stakeholders break down and classify using hierarchy analysis. Yes, you can absolutely find templates. You can go to pmi.org. There are templates on pmi.org. You can Google templates, and I'm going to get to that. Let me just go back one slide because I have a question about the stakeholder cube. Let me just go back for one moment. Oh yeah, you can't see that at all. Power, attitude, and interest. It's very, very small. But I have a whole presentation on that. So if you go to our website, RMC Learning Solutions website, you'll be able to see this, but it's power, attitude, and interest. Very, very challenging to read, okay, on this slide. All right, let's go to next, is we're going to talk about product. Okay, we're going to talk about, I see a question on product, we're going to talk about that next. So let's go to, and if I don't answer your question or don't see it in the chat, we'll hopefully have time at the end that you can ask it at the end. So it's, I want to make sure I'm addressing everybody's question. So creation of the project scope statement happens in planning. A project manager should be aware of the difference between project and product scope. So I want to talk about it briefly here. Product scope, think of deliverables. It's the deliverables with their associated features and functions. It answers the question, what end result is needed for this project? That's the product scope. The project scope is the work done to deliver the product scope, which of course would include the product scope as well. So in the case of a new train terminal, since we have this lovely picture of a train on the screen, the product scope is a train terminal that meets designated technical specifications. I'm just simplifying it, okay? And the project scope includes the planning, coordination, and management activities that ensure the product scope is achieved. So for the train terminal example, it would be a train terminal that meets these technical specifications, plus the management and delivery of all the work to deliver that train terminal. So the project scope statement includes what we're going to talk about next. The project scope statement includes the product scope, the project scope, list of project deliverables, acceptance criteria, what is not part of the project, and any assumptions and constraints. That's what would be expected by PMI, Project Management Institute, for taking an exam for the project scope statement. And I want to talk about now the project management plan, developing a project management plan. This is key, right? So the project management plan is going to integrate all the individual management plans, creating one centralized document to describe how the project manager is going to define, plan, manage, and control the project, including project constraints, processes, procedures, practices, and standards that the team will need to follow. So it is much more than a schedule. Okay, when I first started in project management, I thought the project plan was a schedule. That's it. So it is the guidance document that the project manager and team use to execute and control the project. So let me give you a sense here. This slide this slide lists the documents and information that might be included in a predictive, aka plan-driven project management plan. These are really in no particular order, but I want to review these with you. You've got all the management plans. You've got the scope management plan, requirements management plan, schedule, cost, quality, resource management plan, communications management plan, risk management plan, procurement management plan, stakeholder engagement plan, change management plan, configuration management plan. Configuration management plan refers to how you're managing your documents, how you are naming conventions, how you're versioning and storing and retrieving. That's what configuration management means. Scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline, and then we also need in the project management plan the life cycle description. And this is just an example of a life cycle, and that will be very unique to the project. So you need your life cycle description, you need your development approach, whether it's predictive, agile, or hybrid. So as you can see, it includes the various management plans for each knowledge area, as well as the baselines and the project life cycle and the development approach. Okay, so how is the development approach achieved or selected? So this is a great resource. And I'm going to share with you that this matrix I'm going to walk through with you briefly here was taken from a Harvard Business Review article called Embracing Agile. So if you want to look this up, this is just a chart that was in that article. So I recommend, if you're interested in this next area I'm about to discuss, go ahead and go to the Google the Harvard Business Review article called Embracing Agile. So when deciding which development approach to select, whether it's agile, predictive, or hybrid, these are some conditions to consider. I'm just going to go through these briefly with you. So if we're talking about the market environment, what's favorable for an agile development approach would be if the customer preferences and solution options change often, right? Versus if market conditions are stable and predictable, you would likely want to select a predictive waterfall plan-driven type of development approach. Okay, when we're talking about customer involvement, if you can be closely collaborating and get rapid feedback, if that's feasible with your customers, that's a right condition for agile. Or if customers know better what they want, as not in the beginning, but as the process progresses, that's going to lend itself more to agile versus, where, hey, the requirements are clear at the outset and they're going to remain stable and customers are really not even going to be available for constant collaboration. That lends itself more to a predictive development approach. If we're talking about innovation type, if you have problems that are complex, solutions are not known, the scope isn't clearly defined, or the product specs may change, even creative breakthroughs and time to market are important, it's favorable for an agile development approach. And if similar work has already been done before and innovators believe the solutions are really already clear and detailed specs and work plans can forecast with confidence and should be adhered to, we're talking about more of a predictive approach. If we're talking about modularity, so if incremental developments have value, and customers can actually use incremental developments rather than waiting to the end of the project for a final deliverable, then this is favorable to an agile development approach because work can be broken into these parts and conducted in rapid iterative cycles, and you can get a quicker return on investment for these small increments that we're delivering out into to our users, our end users, or our customers. So, and even if late changes are manageable, those all are conditions favorable for agile versus customers can't start testing parts of the product until everything is complete, or late changes are expensive or impossible. That is definitely not for agile, that's for predictive. And then finally, again, I hope you can see this on the slide, the impact of interim mistakes. If interim mistakes provide valuable learning lessons, okay, that's perfect for agile. But if they could be catastrophic, we're not going with agile, right? So I just want you to have a general feel for this. And I think this is a great article to spend some time on, but I had to leverage this chart. All right, so let's pause for a moment, and I'd like to just switch gears for a moment to look at the exam content outline. Because again, ultimately, we're having these discussions with presumably some of you having an eye for taking an exam, either CAPM or PMP. But what I'm going to reference right now is PMP exam outline. So how is what we've discussed so far relative to the content on the PMP exam outline, ECO? So we covered a lot today, didn't we? In a very short period of time. But this was meant to really just introduce you to some key areas of project management that are really critical to get right when managing projects because they're foundational to effective project management. So here are some of the PMP exam content outline topics that relate to what was covered today. If we're talking about the domain one, which is the people domain, we did talk about stakeholders. So that would relate back to collaborate with stakeholders. Regarding domain 2 of the exam content outline, which is the process domain, task 4, 8, and 13 are relevant, where we're talking about engaging stakeholders, we're talking about planning and managing scope, determining appropriate project methodology, which we just talked about in the last slide, and then what is pertinent to the business environment is task 2, evaluating and delivering project benefits and value. We talked about the business case and the benefits management plan. Okay, so let's do this. Let's close with 3 tips that you can use today. I always like to kind of summarize what we talked about with 3 tips. Before you start a project, review and understand the business case and benefits management plan. This information, which is really about how and why a project was chosen, will really help influence how the project is planned, which constraints are most flexible, what kinds of changes are allowed, and how the project scope is defined. Second tip for today, use a variety of methods to identify stakeholders. We talked about surveys, interviews, focus groups, brainstorming, stakeholder mapping, power and interest grid as an example, personas, right? That's for agile projects. The point is not just using one method, but multiple methods so we can capture more stakeholders and not leave anybody out. And finally, we want to create a project management plan that includes the management plans for all the knowledge areas, and we saw the 10 knowledge areas there, baselines for scope, schedule, and cost, and we need to also include in our project management plan the development approach and the project lifecycle. Okay, that's a lot of information, but this you'll be able to review this slide presentation. And I also have one specifically on stakeholders that will be helpful. Now, I just want to mention something as well. RMC Learning Solutions offers many different opportunities to help you prepare for your PMP certification, if that's one of your intentions. And that's, we have courses that are instructor-led virtual, like in this kind of format, e-learning courses. We have on-site courses where we come to your organization and we do training. And we have exam prep materials such as the book. We have it in print and digital format. We have what's called our Fast Track. That's our exam simulator that is phenomenal. The database is vast of questions, so you could take the exam multiple times and not get the same question. We have what's called Hot Topics flashcards, which are digital flashcards. We have an audio version. So if you're interested in learning more, feel free to, of course, you can go to our website, but you can take down our email address, email us directly, call us directly. We want to make this as easy as possible for you to get what you need to take the exam. And like I mentioned earlier, we've helped over 1 million professionals prepare for certification exams with our coursework and our material. So excellent material and resources. I'm not just saying that because I'm here as part of the organization. Okay, so I want to share with you upcoming courses and webinars. So RMC, we have a lot of we're always having educational courses and webinars, as you know, but what's coming up is we have a PMP exam prep, ILV is instructor-led virtual, like this format, coming up February 3rd through 6th. And then we have a fundamentals course, which is more of a stepping stone to the PMP certification. And that's an excellent course that is on February 18th through 20th. Again, in this format, instructor-led virtual. And then we have some additional free webinars that are coming up, and these are the topics. Master change management techniques for your most demanding projects. That's Friday, February 21st. And the core soft skills for project managers thriving in today's tech evolution. That's on Friday, March 14th. So for more information, you can go to our website and to sign up, or you can call. Feel free to reach out to us or email, whatever is easier for you. So on that note, it's very important to, I'm going to show you how to get your PDU for today, and then address any questions with the time we have remaining. So I'm going to actually show you, rather than just talk about it, I'm going to show you how to do this. So you want to navigate to this URL, which is ccrs.pmi.org/claim. But let me actually walk you through this, because sometimes people have a bit of a challenge. So I put this up here. I think the picture is worth 1,000 words. So hopefully this didn't time out on me. We'll see in a moment. But what you're going to do is you're going to go to, when you get to this URL, when you go to, and you can navigate there, and if you don't have the URL, you can also find how to report your PDUs. But this is just the easiest way to use this URL. I can even post this in the chat for you. Let me actually do that now. So you would go to, that's in your chat now. Hopefully you can see the chat. And then you would go to what's called online or digital media. Okay, and of course, not of course, but I did get timed out. I had this waiting for me in the background, but we're back. Okay, so here we go, we're back. So I clicked online digital media, and I would put the provider name. So this is not in the drop down. So I tell you this, and I'm going to put this back on the screen in a moment, but you want to type in Peterson's LLC. Now, it's not in the drop down. The reason why I keep saying that is because you're going to end up with an error if you try to click something in the drop down. It's not RMC Project Management. So type it exactly as this, and I'll put the slide back up in a minute. But Peterson's LLC, DBA, RMC Learning Solutions, and then click out of the box so that you can clear it. It's not looking for something in a drop down window. Then you type in Diving into Project Management. That was the title for today. diving into project management. Okay, and again, click out of the box. It's not on the drop-down menu. It's going to look for it, but you want to click out of the box or else you're going to get stuck on that menu. And then what you want to do is just copy paste. This is just the easiest. This is my tips and tricks. You need something in your description, so just copy paste the title in the description. It's just easier. And then what you would do simply is put the date of today. Start and end date, obviously, is today. And you're going to put one PDU under ways of working, okay? So hopefully that's clear. I'm going to come back to the slide so you can actually see the details. There you go. But I wanted to walk you through that because sometimes people have trouble if they're looking for something that drop down, they're going to have an issue. I don't want you to have an issue in getting your PDUs, okay, for this. If you're certified, of course, you can only claim your PDUs, your professional development units, if you are if you have your certification, okay? So just be aware of that. Let me just see what questions we have in the chat. I'm just if you need to take a screenshot of this or a picture of this so you can log it later, feel free to do that because I'm going to switch slides here in just a moment because I want to. Well, I guess I don't have to switch slides to answer your questions. Let me see what questions you have in the chat. So, okay, great. We have a recommendation. Thank you so much. Somebody's recommending, highly recommend our exam prep to everyone who's prepping for the PMP exam. Wonderful. You passed PMP. Oh, congratulations. Absolutely congratulations. I'd love to hear that. Let me see. Read his prep book. Okay, so just more kudos for our prep book. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Pat, thank you so much for the compliment. I just want to make sure we get through questions. Thoughts about project management for AI projects. Oh, that's a good one, Marianne. I'm not able to get project management for AI projects. As far as, I guess I'm not clear about, you're talking about the development approach. Marianne, I'm not sure. That sounds like we actually are going to be looking at doing some presentations on that in the near future, but I don't know exactly what your thoughts about project management for AI. Let me just see if you can put something specific in there. Will you send the PDU information in email? That's a great question. Let me see if we can do that. I think it's actually, well, I'll tell you what, you do have the recording of this that will be emailed to you as well, will be on our website. So this slide will be up. You'll be able to see that. So absolutely will be available to you. That's for Nikita's question. Good question. If one takes the PMP test later this year, it may be used the course as PDUs. Oh, yes. Yes, or take it again after. No, if you take the course, you have this log these type of educational events that you're attending, even if you don't have your PMP, so that you can record those. And RMC named Peterson said because of ownership changes. Yes. As far as the renamed, yes, RMC, it's still RMC, but it's DBA. It's Peterson's. Yeah, so exactly what I've written here. It's Peterson's DBA RMC Learning Solutions. That's right. So we merged with Peterson's, which does exam prep courses for college and all different other areas as well. So we kind of cover the full spectrum. Any other questions that I missed? I'm just trying to look through here. I think we got it all and at our time. I'm so grateful to all of you for being here. I'm going to hang on just for another minute and look through these questions and make sure I did get through everything. But if you need to leave, feel free to do so. This will be available to you. Like I said, usually we try to turn this around pretty quickly. So this webinar should be available in pretty short order for your access. I'm just going to, okay. I don't really see any other questions on the content. It's more about sending the presentation, which will be available. Excellent. Okay, so how to get notifications, Robert, for upcoming training. We tend to, if you're already on our list, we tend to send them out. If you're not, just send an email to info, let me go back. It's info@rmcls.com. I like to put it on the screen, but info@rmcls.com. And if you can reach us that way, you can go to our website and you can also get notified You can request to be notified. You can just check our website for upcoming events. You'll see webinars on there. You'll see classes on the website, RMC Learning Solutions. Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we've covered everything. Thank you, everyone. Perfect. You submitted and approved your PDU already. No, if you're not certified with CAPM or PMP, you can't claim the PD. Oh, I see what you're saying. In the future, yes. Not at this time, of course. All right. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time, your attention, and wishing you all a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Stay safe and take care, everyone. I'm going to close out the session.